Mm. So, Mom, can you make me whole first, full screen first, and then okay. Hello, welcome everyone to the 34th episode of ICC Biz Live, where we interact with C-suite business people to give you high-level insights of business and life per se. Today we have with us Madam Vishwapriya Iyer, our life coach and director and founder of BlewMinds Consulting. Uh, now request to ma'am to come on stream. Well,
Thank
welcome,
you.
madam. Madam,
Thank you
yeah,
very much.
first I would request you to introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Surely, Mr. Ghosh, there's a small lag in our videos, so forgive me for interrupting you. Thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to be here. Um, to introduce myself, you can call me Priya. I've been in the HR space for almost 22 years now. Academically, I'm an IIM Core Code. I'm an Oxford University scholar. I was an ambassador. I've studied organizational leadership. I'm also a master coach on the International Coaching Federation track. I've majorly worked in areas of leadership consulting, coaching, of course. I'm also a leadership assessor. I work with CXOs and minus one to help organizations get them to be ready for their future roles. Um, a majority of my life has been in Bangalore. I've currently located in Gurgaon the last 2 decades, similar to my career trajectory. If I were to describe myself in one word or as a creature, and I put this up even on my LinkedIn bio, I would call myself an amoeba. I think my entire journey, both personally and professionally, has been about changing, adapting, transforming, trying to very functionally sabotage, cannibalize my previous versions to move into better versions. And that's what also put in the seed of wanting to become a coach. And of course, as an HR person, I've been in roles where I've worked with um, various hierarchies to help people discover themselves. But working with the C-suite came in very closely when I was discovering my own challenges, as I hit my mid-career, senior career sort of roles. Um, Today, I work with individuals and organizations. I run my own practice. Last 8, 9 years, I've been running my own practice. I've worked with about 300 plus organizations in the B2B, B2C, and B2E space, helping people and organizations be their better versions. And thank you once again for having me here. Back to you, Mr. Ghosh.
UK, great. Now, and also the kind of training and certifications you went through. If someone else wants to go through, I mean, what is the route?
I assume you're referring to the coaching track, which is the International Coaching Federation Master Coach credentialing.
Yeah,
Is that right? Of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
of course. Various stages of my career, I've tried to upskill. For example, work for a few years, then my program with IIM Code, then again a few years, then with Oxford, then the International Coaching Federation, which is one of the most renowned bodies across coaching in the world. Um, they have a trifold track. It used to be called level 1, level 2, level 3 earlier. Now it's called ACC, PCC, and MCC. So you go through intense training, coach training, like they call it. You'll have to pass an evaluation. You'll have to write an examination, which was called the CK earlier, coaching credentialing examination. But now I think it's called the examination merely, the coaching examination. Um, Also, a very important aspect of qualifying to get to, in fact, a level 2 and a level 3 coaching credentialing is how many hours of coaching you actually had. I must have, coached both one-on-one and group almost 20,000, 25,000 hours through my entire career. So they are very stringent and very careful about how they move people through the track because they want to be able to build those skills in coaches, not just for today, but for future. So futuristic skills. So to answer your question, going through coach training, you should have enough coaching hours, you should have passed an examination, you have to submit your evaluation scripts, you will be mentored, you'll be given feedback, you have to be ready to change. I think more than just the credentialing exam, the entire coaching process for you to get to this stage is very cathartic, dear audience. You'll have to go through that change from within for you to be able to impact other coaches of yours, or even to get into the various levels of coaching. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Back to you.
What inspired you to take up this path?
That's such a lovely question. Thank you for that. I do believe most coaches, the ones who want to make an impact, both business wise and individual wise, are those who have a growth mindset, who want to improve systems, processes, businesses, mindsets. Um, I had a very conservative and a traditional upbringing. I come from the south of India predominantly. I was born and raised in Bangalore, and like I mentioned, I worked across geographies. I've been in the north of India now 20 years. So adapting, transforming, um, change mindset is something that I realized people struggle with, and I battled with it myself through my career journey, my life journey. Hence, I think a very basic thought process of wanting to help myself, help others grow, and that um, growth mindset of wanting to keep improve learning was a huge, huge factor. I started the credentialing way back. I think when it was launched, I did my foundation almost a decade or more ago because it was a work requirement. I was working with leaders and I wanted to understand how to coach and hold space and help them discover themselves better. And then who knew it would turn into a profession? And now look back and you ask me this question. I'm not very surprised I turned into a coach, especially someone working with leaders, because I wanted to study medicine and become a psychiatrist. So, in some form, I always was very interested in people and mindsets and what makes us behave the way we do, our drivers, our motivators. So, that's been my journey, both self and I think to be able to help other people through my experiences. Back to you, Dr. Ghosh.
So mostly you help senior management people, right?
That's right. CXO and CXO minus one is what I do.
Okay. Now, from the day I started my career, it has been this thought always was in my mind. How do they remain cool in the most awkward situations and work out solutions? I mean, I marveled, and it became my role model. Wherever, in fact, my job entry everywhere has been directly through the CEO. Because when I was doing my MBA, my professor told me that person at the top is different. So if you really want a plum job, write to the top and not write to HR, because HR will go by various protocols.
Mm.
And that is the way. And I had the fortune of interacting with various CEOs, and I really marveled at the way they kept their cool in the toughest of situations and found the solutions and took their company to put the company in growth path, including my present CEO. I really really I'm amazed by his temper. So now, so now I understand by talking to their secret that they do take help from people like you, and so I mean, like everyone goes through stress points and need some help, counseling, psychological, psychiatrist, whatever. And you are one solution for the CEO of the day. So, how do you help them?
Uh,
Uh,
Thank you.
in
I
in
do hope. Yes, yes.
you uh, must have must help out people in different age bracket, profession, gender, and each one will have their different issues. So how do you help? How do you customize your help? How do you help? Rather, you take it as two questions: how to help the top level people, and how to help other younger age people, but different gender, different professions.
Thank you for the question. And I was smiling when you spoke of how most of the leaders um, try to maintain calm. We don't have a choice. I think we are compelled to keep that. In fact, global research calls out calm under crisis as one of the top competencies for very senior board and C-suite roles, because ambiguity and situational adaptability is something that, in ambiguity, you have to handle it every other day and you have to keep adapting across different situations. You don't have a choice. Especially, it's very lonely at the top. Most of the leaders that I coach, I try not to regress into the past because that becomes a lot of psychology, therapy. We have doctors who do their jobs beautifully. We have psychologists. I have a lot of psychologists and psychiatric friends, psychiatrist friends who do a very empathetic, uh, who perform a very empathetic role, who do a very empathetic job in trying and helping these individuals. My focus is always the present and the future. And I hope I'm able to add value and I become a go-to, for all of them. That's how I've gotten to the hours that I have. Um, First is understanding what is the outcome they want to achieve. And invariably, leaders do have clarity. They might be a little hazy, but they do know these are the symptoms here, and this is what happens to me. Um, Typically, it could be around performance. Sometimes organizations reach out. So I do both group coaching and one-on-one coaching. Group coaching is across competencies, influencing, conflict management, situational leadership, design thinking. Executive presence, executive impact is another. I also do one-on-one. Sometimes these are, Dr. Ghosh and dear audience, what we call an LDJ, a leadership development journey, wherein they start. There are diagnostics. We understand. We use scientific instruments, psychometrics to figure out what are their challenges. Sometimes they are very good individual achievers. And when someone is promoted from an individual to a senior member amidst the same audience, how are they really working with the rest of the team members? There could be conflicts. There could be some sort of tacit resistance from both sides because you emerged from within. Sometimes I work across CXOs who've come from different cultures and who've been planted for change very clearly in the organization from a different culture. So the organization is a different culture, the current setup, and they come in, like expats, so that there is diversity that is established. So one, through diagnostics, I try to understand what is their personality type, what are their preferences, what kind of an individual are they. So a very strength-based approach in coaching is critical. It's super critical because we all don't have, as human beings, we're all very unique. We all don't have all the competencies required. Some are innate, some are adaptive. You can develop some you can't. So you have to understand their own limitations, what you can promise, um, that you will put them on this sort of a journey. So what kind of promises are you making? So one is understanding what are their needs, what is the outcomes that they want to achieve. Two is profiling them, doing the diagnosis, the diagnostics, figuring out what are their real preferences and their types, and then customizing the program according to their outcomes. Also, three, I believe for a coach, adaptability, flexibility is very, very important. And some very credentialed global coaching organizations clearly advocate what we call holistic coaching. You're not coaching a problem, you're not trying to fix a problem. You're helping the individual look at an entire holistic context um, by helping them discover why do I behave this way? What is happening to me? Um, an example that I can state is I was coaching a CFO for almost 4 months, a very senior CFO. He was doing very, very well. Um, Pedigreed B school, global also, engineer, has a financial acumen, climbed through the echelons of his current organization through the ladder, very simple background, um, very driven, very gritty, never says no to learning, very strong. I want to keep moving through learning agility sort of a mindset. And then the organization went through a merger and he moved from managing the India subcontinent as a business to a different geography. So he relocated, he was given all the benefits. And in the India scenario, before he left, he went through a 360-degree feedback. And that's when he came saying that I want to prepare myself for succession readiness, like we call it. So it's a succession coaching. Um, Everything was fine. We worked on his zones, what he can improve. And then when he went back to another country, almost 9 months to 12 months later, he came back saying, in a very abrupt message saying, I'm completely being rogered in terms of the feedback that I have gotten, from a different set of stakeholders in a different geography. And then we began our coaching again, and we figured that what worked for him as a style here had to be completely changed in a different geography, in a different culture. Aggressiveness, telling them what to do. It was already very systemic, quite evolved, the merged entity. So he couldn't be very authoritative or just telling, like I said. He had to take people along. So these are the sort of struggles leaders have. They're lonely, they need a sounding board, they did well in their previous roles, they don't know what to do next, or they're ambitious. I also write on LinkedIn, I'm a micro influencer, and one post of mine went viral. It did very well amongst the rest of them. It says growth before access. All of us want access to a role, to a title, to the ESOPs, to the rest of the benefits, the entire media, glitterati, like I call it, when you are in a leadership role, but it also comes with your readiness. So growth comes first. We have to punch one level above. We have to believe we are ready for the role. So limiting beliefs, my barriers, what did I not focus on? Another common concern that CXOs also come up with, Dr. Ghosh and their audience is they're not able to move from execution to strategic execution. So execution discipline exists. They've been doing their stuff very, very well. See, there are times in our life, like in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 40s, where you're first an individual contributor. And there is Dr. Ramcharan's very renowned book, amazingly researched, called Leadership Pipeline, also on this. I had the privilege and the honor of working with him. He's Jack Welch's coach, and he's such an accomplished individual. He talks of first how we end up becoming individual contributors. So he refers to leadership passages. Then we move into, if I remember right, managing people like individual contributors, then managing team leads, for example, then managing managers, then managing leaders. So this transitioning from executing and doing to actually moving into strategic discipline, thinking, how can I solve business problems? How can I impact the top line and the bottom line? How can I get out of this? Execution is important. Results are absolutely important. Profits, purpose, both matter. But how do we make that transition through our careers? So late 30s, so all genres is what I coach. Late 30s very high achievers to late 40s. I've recently had some amazing leadership work done around early 50s, absolute very senior CXOs also. So they come with very clear needs, either conscious or unconscious. And another thing that I must call out in a forum today, that I have noticed that those leaders who are consistently successful in what they do are absolutely unashamed of receiving feedback and changing. So the more ego inside the room, the more they are crippled around their growth. And I see this visibly across leadership levels. That learning humility, that I don't know enough, I'm ready to change. That change readiness is a huge determinant of leadership growth. I was reading this article about how Mr. Obama, who's known to be such an amazing orator, he has his entire team of those who build his script, who help him with his entire impact and presence. How after every amazing talk, he gets all of them together, meets with them, and asks even the youngest member, who might be half his age, saying, "How did the talk go? Anything that I could have done better? Is there any feedback that you have for me?" So, absolute egoless state, when they are in that state, your outcomes are fabulous. So, what kind of outcomes? How do they see themselves, the diagnostics? Through the entire process of peeling the layers, asking questions, probing, discovering, and then helping them achieve their outcomes. Back to you, Dr. Ghosh.
Wonderful. Two things I learned very much, very influential. Strategic discipline and unashamed of receiving feedback. The only way to success. I mean, really, it highly impacted me. Now, if my next question is, what are the common challenges? Can you say your clients face some common challenges, or all the challenges are different?
You're making me reflect with this question. There are some patterns, if I may use the word, which need reframing in leaders. So there are some similar challenges, and there are some which are very unique also. Now, what do we see as patterns of similar challenges? I've called out some of those in the previous question that I answered. Um, am I ready for the next role? Performance um, for succession. Today, I'm doing a CXO -1 very well, but I have to rapidly and radically change when I move into a CXO role. So the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So my self-belief, the imposter syndrome, like we call it, and I've also realized imposter syndrome initially was coined more for women as a gender, but I see it is true across all genders, and depending on our background, some of them come from very simple and humble backgrounds, and they worked so hard. They've been so adaptable and willing to change that have gotten to a certain stage, but they go through self-doubt. Second, I see is fear of failure. I once coached a very senior leader, a CXO again. I think he was a sales and marketing leader. And when we went deeper, I figured his fear of, he was actually procrastinating. So the pattern was procrastinating, and the organization sent him and a set of people to be coached by me. And it was over a period of time. Coaching, by the way, is not an overnight piece. You have to be willing to put in the work and change yourself. So his patterns were procrastinating decisions. So he had gotten feedback that he's fearful. He puts decisions off. Sometimes it gets very delayed. He waits for the problem to solve itself. And then when we started probing, we did the diagnosis, we had our conversation. See, there are also a lot of coaching probes, and coaching is a very surreal process. Of course, you need your frameworks. Of course, you need knowledge holistically about the individual situation, his context, his background, his whole being, like we call it. But it is extremely intuitive. This is what I have learned through my coaching journey. You're sensing what is happening to them, while you're meeting them. Um how are they responding? How are they reacting? What kind of patterns are you spotting? And to be able to call that out, you need to create what I call psychological safety. There's a global model around this also. So I noticed that it was all around his fear of failure. He came from a very humble background where he had to work very hard. He was a gold medalist, he was a topper, he had been laid off, in his early 30s in a role. Though he felt he had performed very well, he was double promoted in the same role. He'd been given a global portfolio from a local portfolio, and maybe things didn't go right for him. Sometimes it's also about the organization's need. He was quite mature about it. He was quite professional about it, but it had impacted him at a very deep level. So, self-doubt, am I really ready? Fear of failure, fear of what will the world think of me, comparison again. My batchmates are like this, they're getting this sort of a compensation. They've got these global roles. I was a topper, it hasn't happened to me. I feel restless. So there are some patterns like this which are similar, and those which are unique. Um, I had one leader who had worked on himself through a stuttering childhood. He came from a sort of a family of abuse. I also connected him with a friend of mine who's a psychologist. We helped him because coaches are very clear and we are taught to be ethical in our work, which is very, very important in the coaching journey that we do, because this is someone's emotions that you're dealing with, their own, the child in them that you're dealing with. And then we figured, his stuttering externally had stopped, but inside his head it continued. And he came for executive impact, for presence, for using his voice. So some are similar, some challenges, some are very unique. Mm, It is mostly, if I were to look at it, now that I reflect on this question, it is about what we think about ourselves. Second, what we think the world thinks about us. So somewhere authenticity takes a big thrashing amidst profits and the expectations of our roles. We become our roles, and some of them struggle in balancing their truth, their authenticity amidst tough decisions. There are some projects I've done where a certain set of individuals were a part of a team who had worked on a global redundancy project in their organization. And out of those, their own roles had gotten impacted. Um, and suddenly, from working as a team, they got pitted against each other. Is A's role meatier than B's, or why is A being asked, to go? Why has B been elevated? And then the organization decided to help them through what we call executive coaching. So there's life coaching, executive coaching, performance coaching, executive presence coaching. A lot of them come for habits coaching, leadership coaching, where they want to just improve the way they function as leaders. So I think there are similarities and there are also unique struggles. I do believe uh, we humans are very unique. Our experiences, our backgrounds, our pains, our aches, our wounds are all very unique. And this invariably shows up very visibly in the workplace. What we are personally and what we are at the workplace is rarely different. Back to you, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you for this question.
What we are personally and what we are at the workplace are not different. And honestly speaking, I too have fear of failure, but I surrender myself to God. Saying that, understanding that fear, I don't have a coach like you. I just surrender to God
God
and
is
say,
your coach here. God is your coach.
I said that, okay, if you are giving me failure now, I hope, I trust you that is for good of me, and you will give me some success, maybe at a later date. But maybe you are giving me what is best for me. That is a way. But how do you? how do you help your clients to overcome their fear of failure?
Thank you for that. Fear of failure is very, very real in the real world, and when the stakes are high, there's a lot at loss. There is a lot at loss. Their credibility. Um, some of them that I coach are out in the media, and some of them we also end up becoming closet coaches because then they are viewed as, having a coach because there is a problem with you. So that also exists, by the way. Um, One is listening. Um, Second is helping them identify what is the root of their thought process, why they're thinking this way. Three is by building trust. You cannot make progress if you don't receive them in totality. If you don't build trust, if you don't provide that safe space, I generally try not to offer solutions. And as credential coaches, we help them in discovery and not telling. But sometimes the business world that we all live in wants outcomes. And especially if they are B2B, they want to see outcomes. This is the bar, this is how we want the delta to move. So then you end up offering solutions. For example, if it is a succession readiness or it is restructuring, then you help them through the entire project plan. When does he or she, as a coachee, focus on what? How to go about redesigning their entire structure, making a skill matrix with their own team members, identifying their team members' strengths, challenges. If they come with challenges around, currently my team is red, I want to move it to green. Getting into what I call the core. So you have the core problem. There are many angles to it. How are the finances looking for the team? Who's performing? Do you have an operational efficiency matrix? Are you capturing their utilization? Do you know how the gross margin, resources, what kind of numbers, metrics, costs are involved? So you help them look at a very, what I call a business charter, depending on the kind of concerns they come up with. Sometimes they're very technical in coaching. You have to adopt frameworks, matrices, models, guide them through that. Sometimes it can be their own, softer aspect. So you need to be able to move as a coach, which is why I think business coaching has garnered a lot of importance. My work is majorly executive and business coaching because they want to be successful in what they do from a business perspective. Hence, most of the good coaches, like I call them, and you should not be saying good or bad, but if you're successful at what you do, if you're good at what you do, then it shows they have an understanding, they're tenured, they have an understanding of the entire business cycle, how we hire, how we train, how do numbers work, how does the sales team actually function, where are the loopholes, where are the gaps, why are systems not built here, how can processes be improved. So you need to develop a very systemic thinking as a coach, especially if you're working with senior leaders, because they don't have time to be wishy-washy. They are very direct. They just don't have the bandwidth. So you have to be very focused and you have to be able to give them that sort of a guidance and maneuvering in a direction which makes them find value so that they can take something away from the entire relationship. So helping them through both the technical and the non-technical aspects, um, guiding them through their entire business model if required. The entire consulting element also comes in when you're performing. There obviously coaching and consulting become two different tenets, but that also comes in where you're providing business solutions to their problems. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Ghosh. Back to you.
Yeah, I only keep on learning today. Have you written any book on your work?
Thank you. Not yet, but over the last 6 months, I've had a, a
Please,
huge
please do. Please do.
thank,
It
thank,
will help us a lot. And
thank you.
now, now, like uh, uh, question is, do you use any tools or frameworks to help your clients? You must, but what are they? And following question is, ultimately the your aim is, yeah, what I understand, you work on the mind or emotional intelligence, and how to help in increasing EQ.
Ah, so one, I'm writing down your question is around the tools I use, and second is how to improve EQ. Oh, EQ is a tough one. I'll get to that in the same order. I'm a very tools and a framework person, and especially if you're working with leaders, you need to have scientifically calibrated tools. They don't have, like I said, the patience for gibberish and nonsense. They want to be able to see. So tools could be psychometrics. If I'm assessing, then very strong business cases, role plays, group activities. We use a lot of simulations also if this is group coaching. Simulations where they are performing a physical activity in a room and you're evaluating them on very clear competencies. There are different forms of simulations also today, where it can be virtual, where it can be physical. But a scientific calibration is very, very important for me, through the coaching experiences that I tend or I wish to offer to my coaches. Um, Other tools could also be some of the tools we advocate. So, of course, there are frameworks like you use a listening framework, you use a David Kolb, you use an Otto Scharmer, you use Lassie. So, there are many of those frameworks. I don't want to jargonize this for our audience, but somewhere ensuring you customize the approach to each coachee, I think, is critical. There have been coaching sessions which have, kind of driven outcomes for me without using any of, or too many of these models or frameworks, because you have to dummy it down to the level of the coachee. And we're all at different stages of our lives, different stages of our soul journeys, our business journeys, our spiritual journeys. So you have to be able to adapt to that. Um, Lot of questions. For example, I also use the ORID model, which is called ORID, where you give them specific questions. Pre-work is given, a core purpose statement is given, value statement is given. So depending on the challenges that they are currently facing, a questionnaire, a tool in terms of self-evaluation, 360-degree feedback can be used. Investors, board level. We use psychometric tools, like I mentioned, from a Hogan to a Belbin, to SHL. I'm certified on some of these tools myself, so that also comes in handy. You can't have the outcomes that you wish to drive, especially when you're working with leadership, without anything which is scientifically calibrated. Otherwise, it's all going to be, like I said, wishy-washy for them. They need to see value. Um, that's on the tools and how to build EQ. Emotional intelligence and emotional quotient, by far, dear audience, has become a huge game changer. Regulating your emotions. Very successful leaders have seen a pattern, know when to lose their cool, when to demonstrate like they've lost their shirt, or when to hold it in. So feedbacking, self-regulation, emotions management, social awareness, situational self-awareness is again a very strong competency for leaders to do well, and it is benchmarked also globally today. Um, I do believe, and I know this is old school of thought. Many of my thoughts are old school. I do very strongly believe that emotional intelligence in some form is innate. Empathy, compassion, being able to give tough feedback without disrespecting the other person and yet achieving the organizational objectives. Um, so, emotional awareness, I do think, is innate to a large extent. However, if someone is willing, you can very consciously, through awareness, through mind mapping techniques. There are lots of techniques for brain programming and changing your Atomic Habits, for example, is such an amazing book. I've done workshops on those. So there are certain habits. I also call this the imaginary traffic light, between your head and your mouth. So there is a thought, and you use a traffic light, whether it's on green or red, before you want to articulate that thought. So it is majorly, I would say it's maybe 70-30. 70 could be innate, but for leaders, if you want to do well, you have to flip and develop that ability. Listening, compassionate, vulnerable leadership, servant leadership are big schools of thought today. And loyalty, getting people to be driven and motivated beyond the compensation that the organization offers, it only comes if they feel seen, heard, valued, recognized. And all of your, of course, no offense to those, but in my opinion, your um, all of these fun and frolic that happens in organizations are only at a certain softer aspect, because as you move up, your challenges increase, both organizationally and for individual leaders also. Hence you need to be able to understand what is it that your audience wants, what is it that a coachee needs, a leader needs, from a driver perspective, from a motivator perspective, and develop that and provide them with opportunities, to ensure we are able to retain talent and bring in profits today. So that's my opinion and thought process on emotional intelligence. Back to you, Dr. Ghosh.
Uh, I would, in my past, I have seen one people keeping his problems to himself and not opening up. And I really failed to help that person rise in career. And in one person who opened up, I really could take care of the pain points. So, have you ever faced such situation where people are not willing to open up, even though they contacted you and engaged you professionally, or not so?
Definitely, yes. I think we are all painted with different brushes. Definitely, yes. I have invariably an unconscious ability. I think it is also a gift, and I take my role very seriously, to be able to help people get out of their shells. Um, However, there have been instances. There is something we call CQ, coachability quotient. Not everyone is coachable. There have been situations where the progress has been slower, or there have been challenges. Ego comes in from their end, defensiveness, not willing to do the work, expecting the coach, to do everything. You have to travel the path with the coach, right? The coach can only do as much. Like they say, you can take the horse to the pond, but the horse got to drink water. So yes, I've had situations like that. I've also had situations where I have felt I could have done this better, I could have done that better. But there have been, thanks to the universe, few and far in between. Because I feel if you're able to adapt your approach and you're able to naturally bring in safety for them to trust you, listening. Most of the conversations, I feel, if people are heard initially, you develop that psychological safety, site safety space. So yes, there have been, all kinds of situations, but I'm grateful there have been few and far in between, depending on how willing to adapt and change I have been, and of course, the coachee has been. Back to you.
No, again, a very big learning point for me is, I would like to share my personal family point. I tell my children that everything, don't bring all your thoughts to your mouth. Uh, uh, what I learned is, do not react, respond. And that I have seen my CEO also. He will never give an instant. He will think about it and respond after few days. And the response is always the one of the best. So I tried, but yes, and another factor you said, the trust factor. Yes, Where you have the trust factor, you can open up, and where you do not have trust, please don't open up. I tell my children, am I right or am I wrong? What do you think?
That's very, very good advice. Two things for me from what you mentioned. One is practicing the pause. Um, Pausing, slowing down. Um, I encourage a lot of my leadership coaches to develop a framework where one is these are my routine business as usual decisions. So go with it, delegate that, do that. The others where risks are involved, you need to get into details, you need to understand numbers a little more. It has consequences, it has impact. Then take time. So practicing the pause by stepping back is absolutely a superpower. And to your advice to your children, definitely good advice. I think trust is important, and trust is also developed. There is also Dr. Francis Fair's model of trust. He talks about, if I remember right, logic, authenticity, and empathy. He says that trust comes in when you feel seen, you feel someone is being empathetic towards you, and then you're able to present data, you feel understood, and there is an opportunity for you to show up fully, to be authentic. Um, I do think trust is not something that you can easily develop with people. Some of them do it beautifully, and I'm blessed I'm able to do that. Lots of my coaches, even through the years, even after the assignment has finished, remain in touch, continue to be friends. There is that space that is developed, but that comes in only when you allow yourself to travel into that vulnerable spot. So, for children specifically in your context, they should have enough data. And today I work with my son himself is close to 18. I work with a lot of youth, not as much as leaders, but with the youth also. We need to be able to teach them discernment. Look for data, look for logic, listen to your intuition. So I think it's a combination of all of those. So it's good advice, and especially around safety for them. Um, Physical safety, given the world that we are living in, also everything that youngsters go through. You need to look for enough data to be able to decide whether you want to trust someone or not. For leaders, I think it is mostly what competencies their team members demonstrate, what numbers show, what are your metrics really proving, what are the measurements that you're using, and that has to be validated and reaffirmed enough for you to be able to trust. So I think it depends on your life stage. It could be logic driven, it could be empathy driven, it could be authenticity driven. So that's good advice for your children. I hope they benefited from it.
Movie. uh, Shah Rukh Khan said in the movie Dear Zindagi, whenever people have, अगर शरीर का किसी अंग का कोई कोई प्रॉब्लम होता है, लोग डॉक्टर से बात करते हैं, लेकिन अगर दिमाग का कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो, सिर्फ शाउट हो शट हो जाता है, ऐसे दिमाग शरीर का हिस्सा ही नहीं है. I mean, it is so very true. I have felt, but coming hearing from you, I think this is for intelligent people, for C-level people. They do not keep shut. They do open up to people like you.
Something that I've also noticed as a pattern in very senior successful leaders is a bright mind, an overthinking mind. And too much intelligence also means you're constantly it's running. You can't shut it. All the tabs are open. You're constantly evaluating, reevaluating. Um, there is a sense of I want to do this right. So they're trying to find, and people look up to them, right? There's pressure. I need to solve problems. I need to fix business situations. So definitely yes. And by the way, Shahrukh, Mr. Khan remains one of my evergreen romances. I remember bunking college. I was a good student. I wasn't known for bunking college, but way back when Dilwale Dulhania released and watching it in the theater for 11 times. So he remains my evergreen hero. So now coming back to your question, what he said is absolutely true. Um, I think the physical wounds are visible and hence they get treated. But the mental wounds can have a lot more impact because of a society's conditioning. And I see this in male leaders, especially. You can't, you feel the financial burden, you can't fail. You got to be, of this line in this comparison, the provider, the protector, which is true. However, I do think the world has come a long, long way. Um, in breaking this myth. We haven't gotten there yet, like we have across the rest of the geographies, but we are getting there. Um, that it can, the realization, the cognizance, the awareness that it can impact their entire life if something which is mental is not treated, as much as maybe even treating a physical wound. The bias is changing, the stereotypes are changing. It will take a while. The shift will take a while, but I would say I have a lot of coaches, a lot of my friends who are psychologists and psychiatrists who are clearly they are spotting. So they are seeing individuals reaching out to them, wanting to work on their own mental health. And especially after the pandemic, I think it's garnered a lot of importance. I remember going through my own restlessness through the pandemic. All my work from physical became digital, especially the first 3 to 6 months. It was crazy. And I think research also says that domestic violence and mental illnesses kind of skyrocketed through the pandemic times. So it's changing, but it will take a while. Um, but it has improved for sure, Dr. Ghosh.
And now I'll open the floor. There are some questions are coming. People are attracted by this conversation. In the meantime, I have two more questions for you. One
Hmm.
is, how do you measure progress? If you can say somebody has improved EQ or been able to handle challenges himself or herself, how do you measure progress? And next question for you is while handling them, do you don't you get emotionally discharged? I have my own relative is a psychologist in Australia, and her husband is a psychiatrist. And my relative does get discharged, and she comes to me for counseling. Who knows nothing about psychology or psychiatry? But opens and it's a WhatsApp call, and we have such a long time gap. But still, she comes to me for counseling. So my question: how do you measure progress, and how do you recharge yourself?
Thank you for the questions. And she's lucky she has you. I'm sure you are a very unconsciously natural psychological safety provider, which is why she's reaching out to you. I'm happy for her and thank you for doing what you're doing. Your first question on measuring progress. One clearly is through metrics. Many of the organizations who do group coaching and one-on-one coaching, especially in the B2B space, have pre and post through the journey. So it could be a psychometric tool, it could be 360-degree feedback. Um, it could be someone who viewed them this way. We also call it critical incidents methodology, where you're doing behavioral event interviews, you're trying to assess how they behaved earlier and how they would behave now. So there are tools very clearly in terms of metrics to show how you changed. Um, the second part of also seeing progress is it's visible. See, they come back sometimes saying, earlier I would make decisions this way. I would be overawed. I would be overwhelmed. I made this mistake 6 months ago and I'm carrying, that and it's defining me. And I feel I'm dying every day, making similar decisions with the fear that it's going to go kaput the way it did earlier. However, there is a saying, right? If you are now smiling at places where you cried earlier, it means you've healed. I think that's exactly the definition of visible metrics here. If you catch yourself with that awareness that I used to make this decision like that earlier, but now I'm so much less inhibited. I have so much less fear. I'm courageous when I make that decision. So the same situation, more functional decisions, is a visible improvement. So you have metrics, you have tools, you also have visible demonstrated behavior. So that's for your first question. The second on the emotional impact, I wouldn't say it doesn't impact me, Dr. Ghosh. It is hard at times. I'm also an empath. I'm what people call I think it's HSP, highly sensitive persons. I do believe that your ability to clue in into someone's emotions is both a blessing and a curse because you are able to intuitively understand them. Over the years, I think I have learned to detach a lot more. It does not mean I'm not invested in my coaches. It just means that I have to show up fully without my emotions to be able to help them. Um, so I've learned to embrace it and not absorb as much. However, there are seasons, in consulting and coaching where there's a lot of work that happens, back-to-back sessions. You're sitting in very intense conversations. There was one recent project I did where I had to travel to another location. I took an early morning flight, which means I had to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I closed my day almost 10 p.m. in the night. Then I flew back the next day. It does get very intense. I'm naturally, as a style, an introvert. I may not look it, but I can recharge with myself. So there are times I have learned to move through the crests and troughs of work. There are times when I don't step out. I'm just reading, scrolling, doing whatever has to be done. Thank you. Some questions are coming in. I'll get there. So recharging myself. Um, Not absorbing it or jumping into awareness, like I said earlier, saying, hey, this is happening to me. Oh, by the way, I'm also heavily into fitness and spirituality. I started powerlifting 5 years ago, post the pandemic. Also, age, body changes for a lady. That is a huge, huge therapy for me. My 4 times a week, 5 times a week that I hit the fitness center in the morning. My spouse and I started doing this regularly as a practice. It is just my place of worship. I recalibrate, I recharge, I think. There are times I've felt with an intense deadlift move that I have my emotions surging. So I think we all need that one God, whatever is your God, walking, journaling, friends, loved ones, spending time with children. I simply love kids, especially the smaller ones because my son's grown older. So even during our evening walks, which I use for cardio, I'm very drawn to these small pleasures of life. So I have learned, um, I think I'm still getting there, but I have learned not to absorb it and live life in the moment. And I also understand the perils and the hazards of absorbing others, a coach's emotions, then I can't show up for them fully. So I have developed a state of detachment so that I'm able to be able to help them move towards their outcomes in a detached, attached state. Yeah, so spirituality again. I'm not into any religion, though I come from an extremely, like I said, a traditional and a religious family. Um, but quiet time, stillness, a sort of slowing down when work is not very busy, spending time with myself. Um, I do a lot of scrolling. Lots of people tell me social media, I'm hooked onto it. It's negative. It's become a fixation. I think no. If we know how to balance what could turn into a healthy addiction, moving it into a healthy addiction, I think there's so much information out there. um, so it's a journey. Uh, I've gotten to where I have through all the pains and the aches and the hard work and the sleeplessness. I'm also a anxious person naturally because that's where my solutions arrive. I have become more aware of it, and the physical fitness element helps me sleep better so that I can come back recharged the next day. Thank you, Dr. Bush. Back to you.
Unmute me, please. There's one question. How could we manage conflicts among teams? And before that, I must tell you, I'm a follower of Swami Vivekananda, who always teach, and Lord Ramakrishna also, always teaches work, 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 but be like a servant. Do your work, but don't get attached. Detach from everyone whom you are, and you have followed it in heart and
Absolutely.
soul. One kudos to you. I have not succeeded in detaching so much as they have done.
I'm,
Kudos to you.
I'm getting there. Thank you so much. I'm getting there. I'm trying to practice it. A lot of people do feel that detachment is a negative competency, but I do feel if you want to really show up in your duties, both personally and professionally, you have to detach yourself from outcomes, from success. I very strongly believe there is no success or failure. There is no win or loss. You either do it well or there is learning. There are so many things, so many situations through my career, especially in the initial years of my career, where I've bungled up, I've deleted, Excel sheets impulsively at a click of a button. I'm not advocating this for any of our audiences, but I've been, in that journey. I've traveled that path from a impulsive, fast speaker to slowing down to thinking better, to developing more awareness about what is happening to me. So it's a journey, and I wish all members of our audience get successful in their journey. But thank you for the note on detachment, and I'm happy to hear that Swami Vivekananda also advocates something similar.
How the question was, how could we manage conflicts among teams?
Yes, yes.
And after that, we
Um,
will have we exceeded our time.
sure, sure, absolutely.
And
Um,
if people want to connect with you in future, can you share your mail ID or
Please
MBO
do.
website?
My mail ID also, and
Um,
also
yes.
my LinkedIn ID. Absolutely. I
Yes.
get a truckload of inbox messages every day, and I do that for a living. Happy to help them, both B2C and B2B also, please. Can
Okay.
I handle this question for now? Are you okay with that?
Sure. 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 Please. How managing
Uh,
conflicts? Yes.
Sure. There is a framework. There is a famous, renowned, researched framework also called Patrick Lencioni is the management guru and the principal leader here, called Five Dysfunctions of a Team. So conflicts arise and teams break down because of some reasons. One, for example, could be ego, defensiveness, vulnerability, trust is an issue. You don't have a psychological safe space. Expertise is missing. So I think in a situation like this, the first problem that needs to be solved is understanding why these conflicts are even arising in the same place. Is it a functional attribute? Some expertise is lacking. Is it about people being very different, tolerance becoming a challenge? Are your value systems of team performance, of collaboration, your leadership principles accurate? For example, I run, my own practice now. I've got a bunch of lovely team members. It is known that we will not tolerate political behavior. They have to collaborate with each other. They are respected. I don't cross boundaries, nor they cross boundaries. So I think setting the ground rules in place will help you handle conflicts very, very well. Second, from a functional point of view, having goals. Conflicts arise when Priya is in Dr. Ghosh's, span of control, or he is in her line of work. So getting your OKRs, your KPIs, who does what are the expectations? So expectation setting, goal setting, cultural expectations, coming into place, what values, what behaviors are negotiable, non-negotiable. These have to be set very, very clearly. In fact, a lot of work that we do as an organization is into culture building, where trust for teams, conflicts for teams, collaborations for teams, they're not talking to each other, too many silos, there is arrogance, they can't work with each other. So all of these lead to conflicts. So at a softer aspect, setting these ground rules, at a technical functional aspect, getting your goals and expectations set helps conflicts immensely. Another tip for the audience who asked this question, feedbacking. The moment you notice something is not in line with what you set as a ground rule, please do not wait. This, corporates, and I've been in, this domain all my life, like I said, and we end up waiting. for the right time for feedback. End of the year, biannual, annual, no. Give immediate feedback in a kind, professional manner so that this is not repeated. Let them know this is not tolerated in a respectful manner. That is a game changer when it comes to conflicts. And I hope this has helped our audience. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we have to end the conversation for the day. Thank you. Most
Lovely.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks to you, your team, and our audience. Hope to stay in touch and help you all become better versions and also build better organizations, which is what we need. Have a good evening from India if we have any global learners also. Bye bye. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you.